38-year-old Micheal Scofield resides in Atlanta. Though it was an arduous commute, Micheal was grateful for his position. That allowed him to provide for his family, even if it was just enough to get by. Sophia Scofield, his 35-year-old wife, worked as a waitress in a local diner. Her days were filled with serving customers, cleaning tables, and making sure she earned every tip she could. Although her hands were frequently sore from the constant labor, her heart was full of love for her family. Together, Georgia took pride in his work ethic as the manager of an appliance store, a job that required long hours every day. He woke up at 400 a.m. 3 children were born to Micheal and Sophia. The Scofield family's life had never been easy. Financial troubles cast a perpetual shadow over their happiness. Jefferson was 15, Willian was 12, and their youngest, Makon, was turning 10. The couple found comfort in each other and the small moments of joy that their children brought into their lives, even though their dreams were beyond their means. One such small moment was witnessing the sparkle in Makon's eyes whenever they passed by La Petite Makon, a renowned restaurant in downtown Atlanta. With its elegant facade and warm lights, the restaurant seemed like a world away from their reality. Makon, with his bright and inquisitive nature, would always slow down, his eyes wide with wonder, as he gazed at the diners inside. Micheal and Sophia noticed this every time, and it tugged at their hearts. Someday, ruffling Makon's hair, Micheal would say, knowing how much it would mean to their kid to celebrate his birthday in such a grand location. Sophia would grin, determined to make this dream come true. It wasn't easy, but Micheal and Sophia started saving every dime they could. In order to save enough money for the special occasion, Micheal worked extra shifts whenever he could, and Sophia put in longer shifts at the diner. They also reduced their non-essential spending and gave up their small pleasures. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Micheal sat at the kitchen table counting their savings. "We're almost there," he said, in a hopeful voice. Sophia put a reassuring hand on his shoulder and continued. The family's anticipation increased as the big day drew near, and they frequently discussed what they would order. Makon will be so delighted that it will be worth every sacrifice. This was more than just a supper. It was an opportunity to offer their kids a taste of something spectacular and a respite from the struggles of their daily lives. As it was Mac's birthday, Micheal and Sophia were thinking about the delectable meals they had only seen through the windows. As Drew got closer, the excitement was evident. "I'm eager to see what's inside," and the kids were excited to talk about their plans for the day. Makon spoke, his enthusiasm glistening in his eyes. Despite being older, Jefferson and Willian encouraged their younger brother's excitement by making fun of how much food he would consume. Despite their financial struggles, Micheal and Sophia's hearts swelled with joy at the sight of their children's excitement. They felt a sense of pride in being able to provide this experience for their family, something they had worked so hard to achieve. The night before the big day, Micheal and Sophia worked through the night to finish the arrangements. "He's never looked so happy to me," Sophia spoke in a gentle, emotive voice. "It's going to be a memorable night," Micheal nodded. It was Makon's birthday today, and the Scofield family was filled with a newfound energy. They planned to celebrate at La Petite Makon, the restaurant of his dreams, tonight. The morning dawned with a different type of brightness. At 400 a.m., Micheal woke up first, as usual. He quietly slipped out of bed, taking care not to wake Sophia. He looked at his wife, who was smiling peacefully in her sleep, and thought to himself, "Today is going to be a great day." He got his lunchbox and his coffee thermos and headed out the door into the early morning darkness. Despite the lengthy and exhausting bus travel to Micheal's workplace in a nearby city, nothing could bring him down today. It was a big day for Micheal today, so he responded with a wide smile. "Yeah, what's the occasion?" "It's my son Mean's birthday. We're taking him to La Petite Makon tonight." The usual bumps and jolts of the road seemed less annoying, and even the morning chill felt invigorating. He arrived at the appliance store, greeting his colleagues with a rare, buoyant mood. In the morning, his pride was clear in his voice, and I could see he was enthusiastic about that posh place downtown. Frank expressed his sincere admiration, saying, "Yeah, we've been saving for a while. This will be a memorable night." Micheal added, with excitement visible in his eyes. Michael's workday, despite its usual set of obstacles, to go by more quickly. Early in the day, he dealt with a challenging client who wasn't happy with the product warranty. The man was demanding and curt, but Micheal handled the situation with professionalism and patience, keeping his thoughts focused on what was planned for the evening. After the client departed, he told himself to simply relax and that it would be worth it later that night. Back at home, Sophia was going about her own hectic day, and the diner was filled with regular morning customers. Sophia hurried quickly between tables, her mind divided between the task at hand and the evening that lay ahead. As she filled her coffee cup, Sophia murmured to Jane, a frequent customer at the restaurant, "It's morning." "Good morning, Jane. How is your day going so far?" Sophia inquired, attempting to divert her attention from the time. "Oh, you know the routine, but you seem happier than normal. Do you have anything special planned?" "Today is my youngest's birthday," so Jane raised an eyebrow and said, "We're taking him to that big restaurant downtown, Latraine Blue." With her eyes sparkling with want, Sophia remarked, "I hope you have a wonderful time. That boy of yours deserves it." Jane expressed her gratitude and stated, "We're really looking forward to it." At school, Jefferson, Willian, and Makon could not contain their excitement as they told their friends about the special dinner planned for the evening. Their voices were full of anticipation. "I'm going to Le Petit Mion tonight," Sophia proudly announced during recess. "No way, that place is for rich people," one of his friends exclaimed. "Well, my mom and dad saved up for it. It's my birthday," Makon said, his chest puffed with pride. The hours seemed to drag on and fly by at the same time. Eventually, Sophia could head home to prepare for the evening. Jefferson, who is often more reticent, expressed his delight to his classmates, saying, "We've never been to a place like that. It's going to be amazing," as his pals gathered around him to wish him a happy birthday. Willian, who was always the storyteller, delighted his pals by telling them stories about the lavish evening they were about to have. "It's going to be like those fancy dinners you see on TV," he said, his eyes bright with anticipation. He could also see the joy on his younger brother's face. The customary classes and activities at school seemed to go on forever. But eventually, the last bell sounded, and the lads hurried home, their minds racing with thoughts of the exciting night that awaited them. Back at home, the Scofield family had thoughtfully prepared. Sophia arranged their finest garments, smoothing out each crease, while Micheal shined his shoes till they, "Do you think this shirt looks all right, Mom?" The boys took turns taking showers to make sure they were clean and presentable. Makon inquired while displaying a dapper white shirt. "It looks great, sweetie, and you'll look amazing," Sophia remarked, stroking the fabric and grinning comfortingly at him. As he was tying his necktie, Micheal proudly glanced at his family and said, "You guys ready for tonight? We're going to have a great time." His voice was full of eagerness. The Scofield family stood together, ready for the evening they had been dreaming about for months. As they left the house, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city, and the air was filled with the scent of anticipation and the promise of an amazing night. "Yes, Dad," they chorused, their excitement bubbling over. "Do you think they'll have cake?" There was a lot of talking and laughing on the way to the bus stop. Willian asked, his eyes brimming with curiosity. The other passengers couldn't help but notice the family's delight as they boarded the bus. "I'm sure they will," Micheal smiled, adding that it's not just any cake, it's the best cake you've ever tasted. When the family arrived downtown, they strolled the few blocks to Le Petit Mion. The restaurant's exquisite lights twinkled in the twilight. beckoning them into a world of sophistication and delight. Micheal and Sophia held hands, their hearts full of hope and love for their children. They were determined to make this night special no matter what. As they got closer to the door, Makon's eyes grew wide with amazement. "Is this really it?" he questioned, his voice full with wonder. A wave of anticipation washed over them as they stepped through the door, eager to experience the evening they had worked so hard to achieve. Their hearts were filled with the joy of being together, ready to celebrate Mac's birthday in a way they had never been able to before. Little did they know that this night would indeed be unforgettable, but not for the reasons they had imagined. "Yes, Makon, this is it," Sophia said, with a radiant smile. As soon as the Scofield family entered Latrine Blue, the lavish atmosphere of the restaurant surrounded them. A mood of elegance and refinement was produced by the warm golden glow of the chandeliers, the subtle murmur of conversation, and the exquisite clinking of cutlery. A maitre d' smiled kindly and welcomed them, looking impeccable in a black suit. "Good evening, how may I help you?" he asked, practicing his suave tone of voice. "We have a reservation for 5. It's our son's birthday, wonder." "Right this way, please," maitre d' answered, his voice filled with uncertainty as well as enthusiasm. Micheal led them to a table toward the middle of the dining room, an obviously affluent place. The Scofield family sat down at the table, which was set with shiny glassware, polished silverware, and crisp white linens. As they did so, the atmosphere seemed like something out of a dream, and Makon's eyes sparkled as he took in the restaurant's grandeur. "This place is amazing," he exclaimed, unable to contain his excitement. Sophia agreed, her heart swelling with happiness at seeing her children so enthralled. A waiter soon arrived with menus, smiling politely, handing them out. He said, "Hello, may I make you some suggestions for the evening?" Micheal nodded and grinned, saying, "That would be great, thank you." The family was already absorbed in the menu, their eyes wide as they perused the exquisite options. When the server started to explain some of the house specialties, Micheal questioned, "Oh, everything looks so delicious. I can't decide," casting a sidelong glance at Sophia, who was reading and biting her lip intently. "What do you think, honey? What looks good to you?" Micheal asked. "I think we should start with some appetizers, like a shrimp cocktail, and then move on to the main dish, which sounds like roast chicken." Sophia answered with a trace of humor in her voice. Micheal turned to face the kids and said, "What about you guys? Anything catch your eye?" "The steak appeals to me," Jefferson declared. "I want the pasta," in a determined tone. As they talked about their options, Willian contributed, his obvious excitement making Wonder look up from his menu. "I want the biggest burger they have," he said, causing everyone to giggle. The family was clearly happy, sharing a moment that felt like pure magic and a respite from their daily struggles. But as Sophia observed the surroundings, she became aware of something unsettling. At least 2 nearby tables appeared to be staring at them too closely. At one table, a man was whispering something to his companion while turning to face them, and at another, a woman was constantly glancing over her expression, making it difficult to read. A knot of unease formed in Sophia's gut. She tried to tell herself it was all in her head, but the look seemed too deliberate. Nevertheless, she ignored the feeling, determined not to let anything ruin her beautiful night. "Everything was fine, Sophia." Micheal noticed the tiny furrow in her brow, and remarked, "Yes, everything's fine." She hastily replied, attempting a grin. The waiter returned, ready to take their orders. "Have you decided what you'd like?" he asked, pen and notepad in hand. Makon, still in awe, pointed to the chandelier above them. "Look at that, it's so big and shiny," Sophia said, her smile growing more genuine as she looked at her youngest son. "Absolutely, let's begin with the shrimp cocktail." Sophia started to glance at Micheal to get his approval. "I'll have the roast chicken for the main course," she said, Micheal will possess the same. Jefferson is requesting the steak. Willie, the pasta, and the largest burger are all fantastic options. Micheal said, please write down the orders. We'll have a bottle of sparkling water. The waiter responded. The family marveled at the decor, the tastefully set tables, and the overall ambience of the restaurant as the waiter nodded and departed. Their conversation flowed easily, full of laughter and stories. Recall that time we tried to make a fancy dinner at home? Jefferson asked, laughing, and Micheal protested, laughing, saying that we only managed to save the dessert because Mom stepped in and took over. Willian grinned at Sophia, saying that someone had to save the dinner. Sophia joined in on the laughter as they reminisced about the event. Despite the looks from the other tables, Sophia felt a warmth in her heart. She was determined to make this night unforgettable for all the right reasons. However, the glances persisted, and Sophia couldn't completely get over the feeling that she was being watched. She tried to tell herself that it was nothing more than people's curiosity about a family celebrating a birthday. After all, it was a joyous occasion. Makon asked, his eyes shining with hope. Sophia said, leaning over to kiss the top of his head, we'll ask the waiter when he returns. Perhaps they'll bring out a cake with candles just for you. Makon's face lit up with excitement as they carried on their conversation. Sophia observed that people were still staring across the tables. As her gaze flickered back to them, they were whispering among themselves. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make her nervous as she tried to ignore her unease. Sophia resumed her focus on her family. She inquired, hoping to keep things light, when she arrived, what her favorite part of the day had been thus far. Without hesitation, Jefferson remarked, this place is amazing. Willian concurred, saying, I can't wait to try the pasta. Sounds so fancy. Jefferson added, I bet it's going to be the best I've ever had. While I.C., who was always the most enthusiastic, added, the burger, it's going to be huge. As his family continued to share their excitement and anticipation, Micheal watched them with pride and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had worked so hard to make this possible, and seeing the joy on his children's faces made every sacrifice worthwhile. Sophia kept one eye on the surroundings, worried that something would ruin their night. But she was determined not to let it, telling herself that they had every right to be there to enjoy the special evening, just like any other family. The waiter returned with the appetizers, placing the shrimp cocktail in the center of the table, smiling warmly. The family dug in, savoring the flavors and the experience of dining in such an opulent setting. They exchanged bites, each tasting a bit of everything and sharing their thoughts. As they delighted in their dinner, Willian said, I've never had anything like it. Makon echoed him, gleefully chewing on a shrimp. Sophia made out one of the spectators. Whispering again, more pointedly, she managed to catch a few words about black skin, and her heart fell. She couldn't believe what she was hearing, but the words were clear. Glancing at Micheal, who was deep in conversation with the boys, she decided to hold off on sharing her observations for the time being, so as not to ruin the moment when everyone was having so much fun. Makon asked his brightly curious eyes, Mom, do you think we'll get to meet the chef? Sophia forced a grin and said, we can ask the waiter later, as they continued to eat their appetizers. Though the night was still young, and there was much more to experience, despite the unsettling glances and whispers, Sophia's mind raced with determination to protect her family's happiness tonight, even if it meant facing the ugly truth of prejudice once again. For now, she would concentrate on the joy and love surrounding their table, cherishing this precious time together. The Scofield family was excitedly anticipating the next course as they settled back, and Sophia decided to make this evening as special as possible for them, because she knew they deserved nothing less. The waiter returned to take their orders for the main course, and the family eagerly awaited it. Sophia took a deep breath, determined to enjoy every moment they had worked so hard for this night. And she was not going to let anything spoil it. The challenges they faced were real, but so was the love and resilience that held them together. The stage was set for an evening of highs and lows, moments of joy, interspersed with the harsh reality of prejudice. But for now, they were a family, united and strong, to face whatever came next with courage and grace. The Scofield family continued their joyous evening eagerly, awaiting their main courses. The anticipation and excitement were palpable as they shared stories and laughter. However, beneath Sophia's cheerful demeanor, there was an undercurrent of unease. She couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched too closely, and the earlier whispers had left her on edge. The first sign of trouble came when a man at a nearby table leaned over to his companion, his voice low, but not low enough. "Look at them," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Do you think they even belong in a place like this?" His companion laughed, sneering at the Scofield family, presumably thinking that people like them don't typically eat at establishments like this. Sophia's heart fell, and she cast a sidelong glance at Micheal, who was deep in conversation with the boys. She chose to ignore the remarks for the sake of her family's happiness. But tension was rising inside of her as the remarks kept getting louder and more blatant. Another harsh comment pierced the happy environment like a knife. "I bet they're here on someone else's dime." Another voice said, "They can't possibly afford this place on their own. With black skin like theirs, they should stick to fast food." Sophia held back the tears that threatened to stream from her eyes. She wanted this night to be perfect for Micheal so much that she reached out and squeezed his hand. "Are you excited for your burger, honey?" she murmured, feigning a smile. "Yes, Mom," Micheal said. "I can't wait," his eyes beaming with excitement and innocence, despite the brutality all around them. Detecting a change in Sophia's demeanor, Micheal glanced over and observed the tears she was attempting to conceal. He followed her gaze and observed the mocking glances and harsh laughter from the other tables. His hands were balled into fists beneath the table as he struggled to keep his cool. Willian and Jefferson both noticed the tension. "Dad, what's wrong?" Jefferson inquired in a worried-sounding voice. "It's nothing, son. Let's just concentrate on enjoying our dinner." When the server brought their main dishes and arranged each dish in front of them methodically, Micheal claimed that his voice became strained. He smiled as he placed Makon's burger down. A woman muttered in a clear and loud voice, "I wonder if they can even pay for all this." Another sarcastic remark drifted in from the neighboring table. Micheal lost patience and quickly got up, scraping the floor with his chair. "Is there a problem?" he shouted, his voice shaking with repressed wrath. Michael's face turned red with rage as the diners turned to face him. The man who had made the comment appeared surprised for a moment before smiling and asking, "Just wondering if you can afford to be here. We are here to celebrate my son's birthday, so we have every right to be here, just like anyone else. Please don't speak to us in such a way," Sophia stated, standing and putting a hand on his arm. "Let's avoid creating a commotion before things become worse." Looking between Micheal and the other customers, the restaurant manager sped over his face, mask of concern. "Is there a problem here?" Micheal remarked, shaking his head. "These people are making racist comments about my family and questioning our right to be here. Rather than confronting the racists, the manager turned to the offending diners and apologized for any inconvenience. He then said, "Enjoy your meal." The manager raised his hands in a plating gesture, telling everyone to calm down. "We don't want any trouble here. Please return to your table, sir." "That's it? You're just going to let them continue to trash us?" The manager was uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm trying to defuse this. Please, let's not make a bigger scene." Michael's jaw tightened in wrath and bewilderment. Sophia softly tugged onto Michael's arm, begging him to look after the children. Grudgingly, as the family tried to concentrate on their food. The remarks continued, now more subdued, but still hurtful. They should go back to where they belong, someone muttered. In black skin, and another voice added with a cruel laugh. Micheal sat back down, his body tense with anger. The family resumed their meal, but the atmosphere had changed. The joy and excitement had been tainted. Sophia's heart ached as she saw her kids' faces darken as they started to realize how hostile the world was toward them. She reached out to the child, who appeared confused and hurt, asking, "Why are they saying those things?" His voice was small and scared, but she said, "We know better, don't we? We know we're just as good as anyone else here." Micheal found it difficult to maintain his composure as his mind raced with rage and fury. He wanted to shield his family from the hatred they were subjected to. But he felt helpless because of social standards that seemed to shield aggressors more than victims. Willian and Jefferson sat silently, their lunch unfinished. They had seen and heard enough to know that this was the real deal, Dad. Why do people dislike us only because we are black? With a mix of grief and rage in his voice, Jefferson questioned. Taking a deep breath, Micheal searched for the correct words. "We can't allow their hatred to define us, because we are resilient and will rise above it. Some individuals are naive and only consider others based on the color of their skin rather than their true nature." With a lovely cake and candles for Makon, the waiter returned with their dessert. He lighted the candles and stepped aside, grinning warmly, wishing Makon a happy birthday. Makon mustered a little smile as his family sang to him, their voices unsteady but full of love. He then blew out the candles. Unspoken, but evident in his eyes, his wish was for his family to be happy and respected, and for the hurtful remarks to stop while they ate the cake. In an attempt to salvage what was left of their special night, Sophia kept looking around, sensing the weight of the stares and whispers. And she squeezed Micheal's hand beneath the table, finding strength in his presence. The family finished their meal in silence. The once joyous atmosphere, now burdened by the events of the night. Micheal paid the bill, his hands trembling with pent-up anger. He turned to face Sophia, who nodded, her eyes welling with tears that she would not let fall. They left the restaurant in silence, walking home with their heads held high despite the suffering and humiliation they had experienced. Micheal and Sophia embraced their kids. Gentle, consoling, and reassuring remarks. Makon raised his head to his father and asked, "Dad, why did they hate us so much? Some people are terrified of things they don't understand. But remember that we are strong and have each other. And that's what matters." Micheal groaned, feeling heartbroken for his kid. It was a difficult lesson, but one that made them even more determined to stand together and face whatever challenges lay ahead as they entered their home. Sophia gave Micheal a tight hug and said, "You are loved more than anything in the world." The family walked home in the quiet night, their hearts heavy, but their spirits unbroken. They had faced the ugly truth of racism head-on and emerged with their dignity intact. They were greeted by the comfort and warmth of home. The boys were put to bed by Sophia and Micheal, who kissed their foreheads and spoke encouraging words. "Tomorrow is a new day," Sophia spoke softly. That night, the Scofield family awoke, still feeling the sting of the humiliation from the night before. Their hearts were heavy, but they knew they had to keep going. Because life didn't stop, even when it felt like it should. In their humble home, the kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm toast. With that, she and Micheal lay down, exhausted but resolute, and "We will face it together." "Yes, we will," Ul agreed, holding her close. "Together, we are strong." Despite the lingering pain, Sophia went about making a straightforward breakfast of eggs, toast, and fruit. Despite her grief, there was a calm determination in her actions. As she bid farewell to everyone she encountered and attempted to bring some normalcy to the morning, Jefferson answered in a quiet voice, Willian and Makon looked weary and thoughtful as they repeated their brother's words. After a restless night, Micheal strolled in with bloodshot eyes. "Good morning," he forced a grin. "I guess," Willian remarked, shrugging. "How are you all doing?" "But it's a new day," while attempting to sound upbeat. Sophia added, "Let's have a good breakfast and get ready for our routines." They ate in relative silence around the table. And although the food was plain, it provided some comfort. Micheal said goodbye to Sophia and the boys before leaving to catch the bus to work. He was running late, but he needed this time with his family more than anything. "Have a good day at school, boys." The familiar ritual of breakfast gave them a sense of normalcy, and a brief break from the chaos of the previous night. Micheal stroked Makon's hair and remarked, "Remember that you're resilient. Don't allow anyone to bring you down." "We'll try, Dad." Sophia took a big breath and turned to the boys. "Come on. Let's get you to school," as she watched Micheal go, her heart bleeding for her husband and kids. Jefferson stated, while trying to put on a brave smile. The boys were still processing the events of the previous night. So Sophia tried to think of something comforting to say, but she was at a loss. When she pulled up to the school, she turned to face her sons and said, "Remember, you're loved, and you're strong." Her voice was firm, "And if anything happens, you know where to find me." While Micheal arrived at the appliance store, his mind still clouded by the events of the previous night. He was running late. His boss, Mr. Thompson, gave him a stern look as he walked in. "Running late today?" The boys nodded, each giving her a quick hug before heading into the building. Sophia watched them go, her heart heavy with worry. She had her own shift to get to, and she needed to stay strong for them at work. Sophia put on a brave face and focused on her questions. The diner was busy, and the hustle and bustle helped distract her from her worries. Micheal tried to keep his voice steady, saying, "I'm sorry, sir. It was a rough night." "Mr. Thompson?" asked, in a disapproving tone. "Sir," Micheal replied. Mr. Thompson's expression softened a little. "Just make sure it doesn't become a habit, and get to work." He attempted to concentrate on his work as he headed to his station. But the unpleasant remarks from the previous night, the hostile looks, and the manager's inept answer kept playing back to him. He was still at school. Jefferson, Willian, and Makon struggled through the day, but during recess, something clicked. They noticed other children staring at them, and as the jeers and whispers of laughter turned into glances of mockery, it became too easy to recognize what was happening. Then they heard it, snide remarks and racist taunts. "Hey, did you guys hear the Scofield family was humiliated at La Petite Main last night?" One student said, loudly enough for them to hear, "I bet they couldn't even pay for their meal." Another voice added, filled with derision for their black skin, "They should stick to places they can actually afford." Someone else laughed. Willian asked, his voice trembling. Jefferson replied, his eyes scanning the crowd. He felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. Jefferson, Willian, and Makon stood there, stunned and incredulous that it was happening again. Their faces were pallid. The humiliation, the hate, and the unwelcome and uncomfortable feeling. "Why are they doing this?" Jefferson thought, his voice clogged with passion as he tightened his fists to keep back his tears. Willian surveyed his surroundings, his eyes wide with dread, wrath. "And anything else we need to tell Mom and Dad, Makon?" The youngest said, "I want to go home. I don't want to be here," as he gazed up at his brother with tears flowing down his cheeks. The boys walked back to their classrooms with their heads held high despite the pain they were feeling inside. Because they knew they had to be strong, just like their parents had taught them. The mocking continued at lunch as students snickered and pointed, making cruel jokes and comments about the Scofield family's black skin and the events at the restaurant. "Did you see how they were treated? They should have known better." Jefferson put a protective arm around Makon. "It's okay, Makon. We'll get through this together." The boys sat together with their lunch trays untouched as one student laughed. "They don't belong in places like that," another student added, shaking his head. The weight of the morning's events was depressing. Jefferson's heart broke for his brothers as he watched them. "We'll let Mom and Dad know tonight. They'll know what to do when school is out." Sophia sensed something was off as she picked up the boys and asked in a worried voice what had happened. Taking a big breath, Jefferson told her everything about the whispers. "We'll talk to your father when we get home," Sophia said firmly. "We'll get through this, just like we always do." When they got home, Micheal was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. He looked up as they walked in, his face filled with concern. Sophia had hoped that the nightmare was over, but it was obvious that it was far from it. "What's not right?" Sophia took a seat next to him and held his hand. It appeared that some of the other kids had heard about the lad's difficult day at school the previous evening, and were making fun of them. The Scofield family sat together discussing what to do next. They knew they had to be strong to stand up against the hatred and racism that seemed determined to break them. They would face this challenge together, just like they had faced every other challenge in their lives. As the evening wore on, the Scofield found comfort in their unity. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that they had each other, and that was enough to give them the strength to keep going. Michael's jaw tightened with anger. "This has to stop. Our children shouldn't have to face this kind of hatred." "We'll figure something out," Sophia said. As Micheal left for work, Sophia stirred and rose from bed, aware that she had an important task ahead of her. She would confront the school about the bullying her children were experiencing and ensure that this would never happen again. Sophia needed her rest for what promised to be another difficult day. Slipping into the kitchen, he quickly made himself a cup of coffee and some toast before leaving to catch his bus. When Sophia came downstairs, she discovered her boys had already fallen asleep and were enjoying their breakfast at the kitchen table. The mood was gloomy, which was quite different from the usual morning laughter and chatter. Sophia tried to cheer them up by asking, "How did you sleep?" "And, I guess it's okay," Jefferson answered, holding back a yawn. "Complete your breakfast." Willian and Makon nodded, mirroring their brother's opinion. "We have a huge day ahead of us," Sophia murmured, as she poured herself a cup of coffee. After breakfast, she took the boys to school and clutched Makon's hand tightly, feeling compelled to shield him from the cruelties of the outside world. Sophia bent down to be at eye level with Makon. "Be strong today, okay? I'll be talking to the principal about what happened, and we're going to fix this." Makon nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. The older boys walked a bit ahead of them, their shoulders tense from the memory of the previous day's taunts at the school gate. Sophia squared her shoulders and headed to the principal's office. After watching her sons vanish inside the school, Mrs. Harris, the school secretary, welcomed her and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Scofield," kindly asking what she might do for you today. And Mrs. Harris remarked, "I need to talk to Principal Evans." "It's critical," Sophia answered, her voice steady. Sensing the seriousness of the situation, Mrs. Harris nodded. "Please take a seat. I'll let him know you're here." Principal Evans, a tall, kind-looking man in his 50s, with graying hair and a comforting grin, showed there a short while later. Sophia took a deep breath and settled into the chair across from his desk. "Mrs. Scofield, come on in," he replied, holding the door wide for her. "How can I help you today?" Evans, the principal, after an incident at a restaurant the other night. "My children have been the targets of serious bullying and prejudice. Yesterday, it got worse at school, and I need to know what the school is going to do about it." Stephen, the principal, became solemn. "I'm extremely sad to hear that, Mrs. Scofield. Can you provide me with more information? We were unaware of this incident." Sophia spoke in a steady yet emotive voice as she recapped the events of the previous several days. Principal Evans listened intently, making notes, and firmly stated, "I promise that we will take immediate action to address this. We need to make sure that our school is a safe place for all students, regardless of their race. Therefore, I will arrange a meeting with all the parents tomorrow morning to discuss this matter." "Thank you, Principal Evans." Sophia softened her tone and replied, "My husband and I will be attending the meeting, of course, Mrs. Scofield. We will do everything in our power to resolve the situation. I appreciate your rapid attention to this matter." He reassured her that even though there was still more work to be done, the school was at least making progress. Sophia felt a slight weight lift off her shoulders as she left the office, and called Michael from the parking lot to give him the news. When he answered, "I spoke with the principal, and they said they would like to meet with all the parents tomorrow morning to discuss what happened. Could you please take the morning off to attend?" "It's me, Sophia," Michael immediately replied. "I'll talk to my boss when I get back from lunch, and we'll work through this together." While this was going on, Jefferson, Willian, and Makon went about their school days under the close supervision of Mrs. Thompson, the school counselor assigned to monitor them until the situation was resolved. The boys experienced a mixture of relief and anxiety, realizing why they needed protection during the crisis, and knowing that Mrs. Thompson would be there to make sure no other students approached them with malicious intent. Jefferson, Willian, and Makon attempted to carry out their routine duties, but the aftermath of the previous day's events lingered heavily. Mrs. Thompson Jefferson mutely thanked them for being with them, of course, as they sat on a bench. She replied calmly, "Jefferson, we want to make sure you're safe and comfortable at school. You don't deserve to be treated that way." William gave her a serious look and asked, "Do you think things will change after tomorrow's meeting?" "I hope they will." The boys tried to focus on their studies, completed their assignments, and attended classes as usual. Mrs. Thompson's presence gave them a slight sense of security, but the weight of their experiences lingered heavily in the back of their minds. Mrs. Thompson stated that it's important that everyone understands how wrong it is to judge and hurt others because of the color of their skin. "We're all here to support you." Following school, when Sophia brought up the boys, she inquired about their day, asking whether they had any troubles or anything. "It was better that Mrs. Thompson stayed with us the entire time." The Scofield family gathered around the kitchen table for dinner as dusk fell. The atmosphere was solemn yet upbeat, with the events of the previous several days still fresh in their memories. "I'm happy to hear that," Sophia expressed relief. "I guarantee that we'll get through this. Let's just enjoy our meal tonight," Michael said, serving the food. "We've had a tough time, but we're strong, and we'll handle whatever comes next." Makon looked up from his plate, his eyes reflecting the resilience he was learning from his parents. "We'll be okay, Dad." Michael had managed to take the following morning off. "Yes," Michael firmly stated. "We're a family, and that's what matters." "We will." The family ate in relative quiet, their spirits buoyed by the power they derived from one another as they got ready for bed. Sophia and Michael tucked the boys in. Sophia grinned at her husband and kids, feeling a surge of pride and love. Words of comfort and affection that are spoken. "Good night, boys. Tomorrow is a new day, which we will all confront." "Good night," Sophia whispered, planting a kiss on each of their foreheads. "Mother, good night, Father." The boys sang in unison, sounding relaxed but drowsy. The Scofield family's night stretched on longer than normal. Michael and Sophia were wide awake, their minds racing with ideas concerning the school meeting. It seemed as though time was standing still, echoing their concerns, and they knew that the morning meeting would be essential to finally addressing the bigotry and bullying that their children had experienced. When dawn broke, a feeling of purpose arrived. In an effort to display confidence and resolve, Michael and Sophia got up early and prepared themselves, emotionally and intellectually, for what lied ahead. "Are you ready for this?" Micheal said, peering into Sophia's eyes as he fixed his tie. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. They had a quick breakfast together, and Sophia responded, taking a deep breath, "We're doing this for our children." Before dropping the boys off at school, they gave the boys words of love and encouragement. Sophocles embraced each of them, saying, "Be strong today. We'll handle everything with the boys safely at school." As Micheal and Sophia arrived for the meeting, the school auditorium was beginning to fill with parents. The principal's expressions were a mix of concern and curiosity. "Good morning, everyone." Principal Stephen stood at the front with a serious expression on his face. The audience fell still as Evan spoke. "We have a very important issue to discuss today. Thank you all for coming on such short notice." Before addressing this particular occurrence, he proceeded calmly but firmly. "I'd like to tell you a story about empathy, understanding, and the power of our actions to affect others." He paused, surveying the room. There once was a young girl who moved to a new town. She was different from the other kids in many ways, and as a result, she was teased and excluded. Nevertheless, one day a classmate chose to become friends with her. This small act of kindness made her feel valued and accepted. As Stephen spoke, his tone grew more serious. "Yesterday, some students at our school made racial statements towards Jefferson, Willian, and Micheal Scofield." Stephen's narrative appeared to soften the hearts of the parents present. They could feel the weight of what was coming next. Some parents appeared astonished and disappointed, and there were murmurs among them that this behavior is inappropriate and will not be accepted in our school. Some appeared uninterested, but one father, who was seated close to the front, abruptly got up and requested, "Principal Evans, may I speak?" with a look of extreme guilt. "Of course, Mr. Parker," Principal Evans answered. Mr. Parker, an elegantly dressed man in his early 40s, cleared his throat, clearly experiencing emotional distress. "I must express my regret for my son's acts as well as for my own." Micheal and Sophia were watching closely, their hands clenched in support. "My name is Peter Parker. My wife and I were at La Petite Mayan the other night, when we witnessed the horrible treatment that the Scofield family endured. I didn't intervene. Instead, I just sat there and let it happen because I didn't want to ruin our night out. My son Jason, who is 14 years old, has been difficult to say the least. I've tried to correct his behavior, but clearly I haven't done enough." Mr. Parker had a trembling voice and looked around the room before continuing. "When we arrived home and talked about it, Sophia experienced a wave, a feeling that was a mixture of understanding and rage." Mr. Parker continued, his voice heavy with regret. Sophia tightened her grip on Michael's hand. There was a collective gasp from the parents, and a murmur of shock and discomfort filled the room. As Miss Parker looked directly at Micheal and Sophia, his eyes filled with shame. "I am deeply sorry for the pain my son and I have caused your family. I promise to take immediate action to correct my son's behavior. I also vow to do better myself. Our son must have overheard our conversation and used that information to torment the Scofield children at school. This is my fault, not just Jason's," he added, breaking into a somber expression. "Thank you, Mr. Parker," Principal Evans nodded. "It requires guts to own up to one's mistakes and accept accountability, to witness a dedication to change. This is just what we need." The weight of Mr. Parker's confession hung heavily in the air, and the room fell silent. Micheal and Sophia looked at each other. Their hearts hurt from the intricacy of the situation. Micheal got to his feet, his voice composed but passionate. "We appreciate your candor, Mr. Parker. Although this is a challenging circumstance for all of us, it's a positive beginning toward addressing these problems. Head on together." Other parents nodded in accord. As several people kept quiet, analyzing the seriousness of the information disclosed, Principal Evans spoke to the group once more. It is evident that our community still has work to do. We must make sure that our kids know the value of treating everyone with respect and kindness, regardless of their skin color. We will also implement programs to teach our students about racism and the harm it causes, as well as support families affected by these actions, like the Scofield family. As the conference was coming to an end, parents started to depart, some silently debating the events, while others were deep in thought. He looked at Sophia and Micheal with conviction, saying, "We stand with you, and we will make sure that your children feel safe and valued at this school." Mr. Parker walked over to Micheal and Sophia and saw their look earnest. "I sincerely apologize," he repeated. "Please let me know if there is anything I can do to assist. Put this right." Sophia softened her gaze and said, "Thank you, Mr. Parker." They shook hands, a timid but hopeful beginning to their relationship. "Your apology means a lot. Let's work together to make things right." After the meeting, Micheal and Sophia began to mend the rift that had been exposed. They felt cautious optimism that the road ahead would be difficult. But that night, back at home, the Scofield family gathered around the dinner table. The atmosphere lighter, the tension of the previous few days beginning to lift. Jefferson asked, looking between his parents, "How did it go today?" Micheal replied, smiling and tugging at his lips, "The school is going to take action, and one of the parents apologized for what happened." "That's good." With a tone of comfort in his voice, Willian remarked, young but wise. The family shared a dinner as beyond his years gazed at his parents, with wide eyes, wondering whether they would be okay. Sophia reached across the table to grip his hand, saying, "We're on the right path. Together, we'll keep working to make things better." As they settled in for the evening, their relationship was reinforced by their shared experiences. They knew there would be more difficulties ahead, but they were prepared to face them with bravery and love. After taking a stand and resolving to fight for their children's future, Micheal and Sophia held each other close, finding solace in their unity. A few days went by, and life at the boys' school gradually returned to normal. The meeting had a big impact, and the school made decisive steps to address the racism and bullying the boys experienced. Sophia spread out a picnic blanket under a large oak tree, while Micheal unpacked the basket filled with sandwiches, fruits, and drinks. The Scofield family was gradually recovering from the ordeal and felt a renewed sense of safety and acceptance. One sunny Saturday, the park was a vibrant place filled with children's laughter and the gentle hum of families enjoying their time together. It was the perfect escape from the troubles of the previous week. "Jefferson," Sophia said, looking at Micheal, Willian, and Makon. "Their faces are beaming with joy as they play on the playground. It's good to see them happy again." Micheal responded with a kind smile as they sat down to enjoy their lunch. Sophia recognized the embarrassed parent from the school meeting, Peter Parker, along with his wife Linda and their kid Jason, approaching them. Micheal glanced at Sophia as she gently prodded him. "That's Mr. Parker and his family." When Micheal looked up and saw them coming, he prepared himself for the confrontation by taking a deep breath. Although Peter Parker had apologized sincere, meeting him again evoked strong feelings. "Hey there, Mr. Parker." As they approached, Micheal said, "Hello, Micheal. It's nice to see you." "Sophia," Peter answered in a friendly voice. "We were just out for a walk when we noticed you." And Sophia smiled and said, "I hope you don't mind us coming over. It's nice to see you again." Linda, as they all settled down, Linda gave them a warm grin. Said, "It's good to see you both under better circumstances." Jason, with his eyes downcast, faced Micheal and Sophia. "Mr. and Mrs. Scofield, I really apologize for my actions. I recognize now that they were wrong. Would you please pardon me?" Sophia's heart melted upon witnessing the boy's contrition. "We appreciate Jason's apology. It takes guts to own up to mistakes. You have our forgiveness. Michael agreed, nodding. We appreciate your apologies. It means a lot, Jason thought, as relief lit up his face. Thank you, he replied. May I go play with your kids? Michael grinned and said, Go have fun. Jason made his way to Jefferson, Willian, and Makon, who greeted him with open arms. They soon began playing together, and as the kids played, Peter turned to Micheal and Sophia, his expression hopeful but serious. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I want to do more to make things right. I'm a pretty good lawyer, and I'd like to offer my services to you for free. I would like to assist you in suing the eatery. Sophia and Micheal looked at one another, clearly surprised by the offer and grateful for it. Micheal remarked slowly, but we should give it some thought. I know, Peter answered, but please give it some thought. We have been through a lot, and knowing that someone wants to help us means a great deal. We definitely think about it. Take all the time you need. What happened to your family was wrong, and I want to help you get the justice you deserve. I should have stood up for you that night, and this is my way of trying to make up for that. Sophia felt a glimmer of hope. When you're ready, just let me know, I'll be here for you, Peter added in an honest tone. Linda nodded, agreeing you want to support you in any way we can. Because you deserve to feel valued and safe. The Scofields were relieved to have allies who would support them, but they also wanted to enjoy the peace and happiness they had found in the park for the time being. Thank you, Micheal said in a grateful voice. But for now, let's just enjoy this beautiful day. They chatted for the rest of the afternoon, sharing stories and watching their kids play together. The bond that was developing between the families felt sincere and hopeful, a testament to the power of understanding and forgiveness. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the park, Sophia looked around at her family and their new friends. The Parkers and the Scofield family packed up their bags and started to return home. The kids, who had become close friends, went ahead of them, smiling and chatting like they had known each other for ages, until they arrived at their cars. Peter turned to face Micheal and Sophia one last time, telling them not to face this alone, and to remember that I'm here to help whenever they're ready. Micheal retorted with a genuine, thank you, Peter. It means a lot to us. The next day, Sunday, dawned bright and clear. The Scofield family decided to go for another walk, finding solace in the small pleasures of being together. They strolled through their neighborhood, enjoying the fresh air and the warm sun on their faces. However, their path inevitably took them past La Petite Maison, the restaurant where they had experienced the worst moments of their lives. As they approached the restaurant, memories of that night came flooding back. The Scofield family parted ways, each heading home with a sense of renewed hope. Micheal, all of the males, and Sophia became silent, buried in their own thoughts. The agony and humiliation they had experienced eclipsed the happy anticipation they had felt on Makon's birthday. Micheal and Sophia were appalled by what they saw from a distance. The restaurant manager was going about his business as if nothing had happened. He was greeting patrons, supervising employees, and preserving the establishment's image of refinement and elegance. After everything that had transpired, Sophia trembled with fury and said, "Can we go home now?" The boys stared at their parents, sensing the tension, and Michael's jaw tightened as if nothing had happened that night, or our grief mattered. Nothing. For the sake of her kids, Sophia forced a grin and nodded. Yes, let's head home. As they walked back, the burden of the past and the uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on them. When they arrived at their house, the living room was silent, with many unsaid thoughts. Sophia said in a hushed voice, "We need to discuss what happened and our plans for moving forward." Micheal met her gaze with a nod, saying, "And thinking about it too. Parker has offered to assist us in filing a lawsuit, so we should think about it." Sophia inhaled deeply. This is about more than just us. It's about speaking out against injustice for the sake of our community and family as well. We have to make sure that nobody else experiences this. You're right, Sophia. We can't let them get away with this. We need to fight back. They invited the boys over and sat them down, wanting to engage them in the discussion. We've decided to pursue legal action against the restaurant. Michael's eyes softened as he looked at his wife. Michael gently clarified, Mr. Parker Jefferson, who is usually the most thoughtful of the three, nodded slowly. I think it's the right thing to do, Dad. We can't let them treat people like that, said the lawyer. We met. Willian and Makon turned to face their parents, their eyes wide. Will it be hard? Makon questioned in a tiny, maybe voice. As they sat down for dinner, the conversation turned to their plans for the next steps. We'll contact Mr. Parker tomorrow, Michael said. Sophia admitted, but it's important. We need to show that we won't stand for being treated this way. The family spent the rest of the day reflecting on their decision. There was a sense of determination in the air, a resolve to see justice done. Sophia nodded. I'll start writing everything down, she said. We're doing this for all of us, and we're doing it together. That night, as they got ready for bed, Jefferson looked at his parents and said, You're really brave, Mom and Dad. I'm proud of you. Michael grinned at his son. Michael and Sophia embraced, finding strength in their unity and knowing that they were acting morally. With those words, they found a measure of peace, prepared to face the trials ahead. Sophia muttered, Yeah, we are, agreed, his heart full of love for his family, and will keep doing it no matter what. The Scofields knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to fight for justice, and not just for themselves, but for their community as well. The Scofield family, united in love and resilience, prepared to continue their journey with courage and hope. The following morning, Michael and Sophia contacted Peter Parker, who was ready and willing to help set up a meeting for them to discuss their case in detail. The Scofield family sat together in their living room, getting ready for their meeting with Parker. Michael surveyed his family and felt his voice remained firm as he spoke. We're doing this for all the right reasons. A renewed sense of purpose. The following day, lawyer Peter Parker showed up at the Scofields' home for their scheduled meeting. He was on time, well prepared, and had a professional yet approachable demeanor. Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with determination. For our children, for our future, and for everyone who has ever been made to feel less because of the color of their skin. The Scofield family, ready to take on the world, faced their future with strength and unity, knowing that together they could overcome anything. Good morning, Peter. Michael and Sophia greeted him and offered him a seat at their dining table. Michael said, Good morning, Michael. Thank you for coming. Sophia. Peter smiled warmly in response. After reviewing the information you gave me today, I'd want to talk about the approaches we'll take to deal with your situation. As Peter outlined his strategy, Michael and Sophia paid close attention. First, we must file an official police report, which will serve as documentation of the incident and serve as the foundation for our case. Once we have that, we can move on with assembling proof and getting ready for a possible lawsuit against the eatery. Sophia nodded, exuding a sense of resolve and nervousness. That seems like a decent place to start. What should we do? Together, we'll head to the police station. Peter stated, It's crucial that we give a clear and comprehensive account of what happened. I'll handle the paperwork and make sure the report is filed correctly. After exchanging glances, Michael and Sophia nodded, saying, We're ready. Michael said that the three of them drove to the local police station. As they pulled up to the front desk, a weary-looking officer looked up at them. Can I help you? He asked in an indifferent tone, to which Peter firmly replied, We're here to file a report about a racially motivated incident that occurred at La Petite Maison. The officer raised an eyebrow, looking skeptical about the nature of the incident. But his expression didn't change. We're pretty busy here, are you? Sure, this is something that requires police involvement, Peter explained. As Michael's anger rose, Peter interrupted him, saying, "This is absolutely a matter for the police. Racial discrimination and harassment are serious offenses. Please take this report seriously and process it accordingly." The officer's side was visibly reluctant, so Michael told him to take a seat. They had to wait what seemed like an eternity before another officer called them over. This officer was younger, but his attitude was no better. With hardly disguised impatience, he listened to their account and slack-handedly took notes. When the officer concluded, Peter leaned in and spoke in a chilly, authoritative tone. The officer, surprised by Peter's assertion, nodded rapidly. "I need to make it clear that we will not stand for any further delays or apathy. This is a serious situation, and if this report is not handled appropriately, we will escalate it." "Yes, sir, I'm aware that they departed the station." Michael and Sophia were both amazed and frustrated at the same time. "Peter, that was very amazing." Peter responded with a comforting grin, saying, "Now that we've taken the first step, I'll handle the next part, which involves dealing with the legal and bureaucratic aspects. You both may go back to your regular activities while I work on this." Sophia thanked you for standing up for us. "It's my job." After returning home, Michael and Sophia felt the following morning. Michael went to work trying to focus on his tasks, but the events of the previous days weighed heavily on his mind. He noticed some of his colleagues whispering and giving him judgmental looks during a break. Despite knowing the journey ahead would be difficult, they felt confident with Peter by their side. Mark came up to him. "Michael, I've heard that you've been giving people a lot of grief when you file complaints. Do you really believe it's worth it?" "Yes," Michael thought to himself. What had happened to his family was horrible, and we should be held accountable. Mark shrugged. "That's great luck, but don't expect everyone to be there for you when you're feeling low." When Michael went back to work, he was still feeling alone and criticized. But as he was wrapping up his shift, a coworker, Sarah, smiled sympathetically as she walked over to him. "Michael, her remarks gave me a sense of relief and fresh motivation, so thank you, Sarah. It means a lot. I just wanted to express how much I love what you're doing. Standing up against racism is never easy, but it's so necessary. Don't let the negativity get to you. You're doing the right thing." Meanwhile, despite the difficulties, Sophia stayed focused on her job at the cafe and served customers with her customary grace. However, her thoughts were constantly drawn to the ongoing legal procedure, since she knew that their actions would have an impact. There was stress mixed with hope as the Scofield family gathered at home that evening to share a meal and talk about their day. Just as they were finishing dinner, the phone rang. It was Peter Parker. "Hi, Michael. I have some positive news to share." Peter told me that his voice was heard, the police report was formally filed, and I began the process of gathering evidence. "Things are moving along," Will told his family. The news and a feeling of success permeated the room. "Thank you, Peter. We couldn't have done this without you," Michael said. "It's just the beginning, but it's a strong start. We'll keep pushing forward," Peter responded. "I'll keep you updated on the next steps." After the call, the Scofield family sat down to discuss the day's events. They knew that the fight against the restaurant and its manager was just getting started, but they were optimistic because of their new ally, Peter Parker. With the complaint properly filed, the Scofield family felt that progress had been made. And weeks passed, and they went back to their routines with the hope that justice would be served. However, as time went on, Peter noticed a troubling delay. The case, which should have been moving forward steadily, seemed to be stalled. Peter made several calls to inquire about the status, but the responses were evasive and unsatisfactory, leaving Peter frustrated. Peter decided to use some of his contacts to further investigate what he discovered, enraged that it seemed those in charge of the case were purposefully ignoring it and allowing it to languish without any attention. Peter realized he had to move swiftly and called Micheal and Sophia to ask for an urgent meeting at their house. "Thank you for coming." As they sat down in the living room, Micheal exclaimed, "Peter, what's going on?" Peter inhaled deeply. "I've discovered some unsettling information. The court officials handling your case are purposefully delaying it in the hopes that it will simply go away if they ignore it for long enough." Sophia's eyes widened in shock at how they could do that. "It's not only unethical, but it's not even legally allowed. They're counting on you giving up, but we won't allow that to happen," Peter clarified. Michael's brow furrowed. "We need to escalate this, which includes going public. What can we do?" Peter stated that we must notify the media of all the events that transpired in the restaurant and all the developments about your case. Sophia seems nervous due to the strong press coverage. Peter acknowledged, "But getting the public to support us is the best way to exert pressure and ensure that your argument receives the attention it merits." Micheal held Sophia's hand and firmly squeezed it, saying, "We can't back down now that we've come this far. If this is what it takes, we'll do it." Sophia nodded, her determination growing. Over the following few days, Peter Letton will accomplish it. Peter made arrangements for a news conference and contacted multiple media outlets to guarantee that the story would receive extensive publicity. The Scofield family got ready, aware that their move would garner a lot of attention, both favorable and unfavorable. When the day finally came, Peter and the Scofield family stood in front of a small group of TV cameras and reporters. The park they had selected for the press conference was busy with activity, which added to the tense atmosphere. "Thank you for coming today," Peter said as he took the podium. "We are here to tell the story of the Scofield family and the injustices they have experienced. Not only were they the targets of racial harassment and discrimination at a nearby restaurant, but those in positions of authority have purposefully hampered their efforts to seek justice." Peter narrated what happened that evening at La Petite Maison, including the hostile atmosphere and the manager's inaction. He then went on to detail the incompetence and delays in processing their case, emphasizing the unethical actions of the court officials. Next to move forward were Micheal and Sophia, whose expressions were a mix of vulnerability and resolve. Micheal began by speaking in a calm yet emotive voice. "My son's birthday was supposed to be a happy occasion, so my family and I went to La Petite Maison to celebrate. Instead, we encountered prejudice and hatred because of the color of our skin. Our children were made fun of, and we were made to feel ashamed. We tried to get justice, but it seemed like the system was working against us." The reporters listened carefully, some taking notes, and Sophia took a long breath before speaking. "We're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for our community and for everyone who has ever been made to feel inferior because of their black skin. We deserve to be treated with respect and dignity." "What do you expect to accomplish with this press conference?" As some people were filming the event, questions concerning the family's trauma and the subsequent mishandling of their case came in quickly and with fervor. "We want accountability," a reporter questioned. Peter retorted, "We want to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else, as well as hold court authorities accountable for their negligence in handling this case, and holding those accountable for the bigotry at the restaurant accountable." Micheal was asked by a different reporter, "How has this experience affected your family?" Micheal gave Sophia a quick look before responding, saying, "It's been really tough. Our kids are hurt and confused, and we've had a hard time explaining why this happened to them. But it's also strengthened our bond. We're determined to see this through and stand up for what's right." At the press conference, the Scofield family had a mix of relief and concern as Drew came to an end. They had told the world about their tale, and now had to wait to see how it would be received. That evening, at home, the family gathered around the television to watch the news coverage of their press conference. The Scofield family's quest for justice and the court officials' alleged misbehavior were featured prominently in the headlines, and this was only the beginning of the story. Peter stated that while they sat there, the public's response will put pressure on the system. So we must continue to be resilient and prepared for whatever happens next. Micheal gave a sympathetic nod. As the new episode came to a conclusion, Sophia grinned, her heart filling with pride for her family. We've faced so much before. We can handle this too. A renewed sense of purpose. We're ready for whatever it takes to see this through. Micheal switched off the television and turned to face his family. We are taking this action for the best interests of our children, our community, and everyone who has ever experienced bigotry. The Scofield family, with Peter at their side and the support of their community growing, felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning after the press conference, the Scofield family sat together at the breakfast table, their faces displaying a mixture of determination and anxiety. Sophia took his hand, squeezing it tightly and vowing to keep fighting no matter what. When the phone rang after dinner, Micheal answered and recognized Peter Parker. "Good morning, Micheal." "Peter, I wanted to let you know that the press conference has had a significant impact, and we need to get ready for the next steps." Micheal and Sophia knew they were entering a crucial phase of their fight for justice. The procedure will proceed once the public and media pressure kicks in. Micheal nodded, his expression serious. "What must we do?" "We must make a compelling case." Peter answered, "I'll be gathering witnesses and proof to back up our allegation. This is important because it will strengthen our argument and make it more difficult for the adversary to refute it." Sophia went closer to the phone, listening closely. Peter said, "We need your testimonies if they're willing to come forward and share what they saw. It will greatly strengthen our case." Sophia needed to reach out to other patrons who were at the restaurant that night. Sophia and Micheal exchanged resolute glances. "We'll do everything we can," Micheal stated firmly. "We need to be meticulous and cover every detail. This is our opportunity to take a firm stance against the injustice you experienced following the call," Peter retorted. Together with their kids, Micheal and Sophia sat down to talk about what to do next. "We will require every bit of assistance that we can receive." Micheal said, "Please let us know if you know any friends who might have been at the restaurant that night." Jefferson, Willian, and Makon nodded, realizing the significance of their parents' request and promising to try their best to assist Dad. As the days went by, Jefferson remarked, the press conference picked up steam. After news organizations carried the story, many people talked about the Scofield family's pursuit of justice. One afternoon, when Micheal was at work, his phone rang, and it was the manager of La Petite Maison. The public outrage increased pressure on the restaurant and the court officials overseeing the case. Despite experiencing a wave of rage, Micheal responded coolly, "Hello, this is Micheal Scofield." The speaker on the other end sounded worried, so he added, "Mr. Scofield, this is Mr. Clark, the manager of La Petite Maison. I'm calling to apologize for what happened that night. We never intended for things to get so out of hand." Micheal clenched his jaw. "A phone apology isn't enough, Mr. Clark. You allowed racism and humiliation to occur in your establishment. We need more than just words," Micheal said. "I understand, and I want to make things right. Can we settle this matter privately? I'd like to offer compensation and avoid further escalation." Mr. Clark hesitated before saying, "Yes." Micheal inhaled deeply. "We'll take it under two conditions. First, you have to publicly apologize and own up to your error. Second, you have to identify the customer who was causing the excessive racism." After a protracted silence that evening, Mr. Clark eventually stated that disclosing their identities would be more bother than it would be worth. Micheal had a sense of disappointment when the call ended, and we had nothing else to talk about. "We're going to continue with the procedure." Micheal told Sophia about the talk and said he wanted to resolve things quietly, but he wouldn't comply with our demands. Sophia gave a dismissive shake of her head. Moving forward is the correct thing to do, so we must remain resolute and have newfound resolve. As the pressure mounted, the Scofield family remained united. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were committed to seeing it through. Their resolve was further strengthened by the support they received from their community, friends, and even strangers who were moved by their story. Micheal and Sophia continued their efforts to gather support from other customers. They contacted friends, acquaintances, and even reached out on social media, asking anyone who had witnessed the incident to come forward. Peter Parker worked tirelessly using his contacts and legal expertise to gather evidence and build a solid case. Peter gave us an update one evening when he called. "We've been able to gather a number of willing witnesses, which is a big step forward. We're assembling a solid case, and I think we stand a good chance of winning." "Thank you, Peter. Sophia mentioned that we couldn't have done this without you." "It's my pleasure." Micheal and Sophia felt a wave of hope. That night, as they gathered for dinner, the Scofield family felt a sense of accomplishment. They had taken significant steps towards justice, but they knew the journey was far from over. "We've made great progress," Peter replied, "but remember, this is just the beginning. We need to stay vigilant and keep pushing forward." Micheal stated, "We have to remain strong and keep fighting." As he glanced around the table at his family, when they finished their dinner, the phone rang again, and Sophia nodded, her eyes full with resolve that we are in this together and we won't back down. This time, a reporter was inquiring about an interview in order to delve more into their press conference. The Scofields concurred that it was critical to maintain their narrative in the public eye. Micheal and Sophia were interviewed the following morning when the reporter showed up at their house. They talked about their experiences and the progress they had made, as well as the significance of speaking out against racism and the requirement for systemic change. "Our struggle is not limited to us." During the interview, Micheal stated that he wanted to make a difference and make sure that no one else had to experience what we had. He said this was for everyone who has experienced discrimination and injustice. As the interview aired that evening, the Scofields' determination was strengthened by the outpouring of supportive and encouraging letters from the community. For the Scofield family, the days that followed the interview were hectic. As national news sources began to pick up the story and media attention to their case grew, the Scofield family's experience with racism and the way their case was handled angered the public, who responded angrily to both. Peter Parker, the family's attorney, was aware that the increased focus was a double standard. Ed Sword's actions increased support, but also increased attention and pressure. He continued to fight for a formal investigation into the court authorities' original handling of the case. As part of his legal strategy, because we must hold them accountable, Peter informed Micheal and Sophia during one of their sessions that it was necessary to reveal their partiality and neglect. Micheal gestured with a nod. As Peter worked on, we were resolute and prepared for whatever it took. While the Scofield family was gathering evidence and testimonies, civil rights organizations rallied behind them, organizing peaceful protests and vigils that drew sizable crowds of people holding signs that read, "Justice for the Scofields and End Racism Now." But not everyone was in favor of the Scofield family. Nevertheless, the Scofield family persisted in reaching out to witnesses from the restaurant, and their efforts paid off, as several people agreed to provide statements bolstering their case. The Scofields faced criticism as a result of their newfound prominence. Some accused them of misrepresenting their experiences or attempting to gain attention. And one evening, as the family was sitting down to supper, the phone rang. When Micheal responded, the caller's voice growled, "You think you can stir up trouble and get away with it? You better watch your back." Michael's face clouded. Micheal grabbed his hands and hung up, shaking with anger. He said, looking at his family, "We can't let them scare us." The tension was palpable, but so was the outpouring of support from their community. Beyond encouraging letters, donations to aid in their legal battle, and messages of solidarity, people from all over the nation called. One afternoon, Peter called with important news. "We've pushed hard enough that a formal investigation into the initial handling of your case has been launched," he declared. "This is a significant step forward." "That's great news." Sophia mentioned that she was beginning to feel hopeful. Peter stated, "I have meetings with several key figures scheduled, and we're also organizing a major rally to keep the momentum going." Sophia asked what would happen next to keep Peter under pressure. The next few days were occupied with risky meetings and demanding legal maneuvers. One evening, Micheal and Sophia attended a community rally organized by a prominent civil rights group. The atmosphere was charged with energy and determination as they stood on the stage. Looking out at the sea of supportive faces, they felt a surge of strength. Peter met with judges, lawyers, and civil rights leaders, making the case for why the Scofields' experience needed to be addressed at the highest levels. Each meeting was a critical step in building a stronger case. Micheal approached the microphone. "We are grateful that you are here. Your support is invaluable to us as we battle for everyone who is facing challenges, not just our family. Together, injustice and discrimination can change the world." Although the response was encouraging, Micheal and Sophia realized the true struggle was ahead. The crowd burst into cheers and chanted chants of unity. Still, to a group of Sam Sewell's co-workers who had been critical of his actions, confronted him as he was leaving work. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," one of them sneered. "Why don't you just drop it?" In the midst of the public demonstrations and legal battles, they continued to face personal challenges, threats, and backlash, but they remained resolute. At a time when tensions seemed to be at an all-time high, Micheal stood tall and maintained a steady tone of voice, saying, "This isn't just about me. This is about doing what's right." Peter phoned with some important update. He declared that we had finally set a court date for the case. "We're going to move forward with this." The Scofield family received the news with a wave of relief, concern, and determination. They understood that this was only the start of another difficult chapter, but they were prepared. And when they gathered for dinner that evening, there was a cautious optimism about how far they had come. While they were finishing their meal, the phone rang again. This time, it was a reporter asking for a statement regarding the court date. Sophia said, "Looking at her family, we're going to keep fighting. We're not alone." Micheal added. Micheal and Sophia exchanged ideas, highlighting their dedication to justice and equality. "We believe in the power of truth and justice, and we're not going to stop until we see it," Micheal remarked over the phone. "But our fight is far from over. Take control." The following morning, as word of the court date rapidly circulated, while opponents persisted in their criticism, supporters gathered around the Scofields. The public's interest in the case increased as news outlets continued to provide updates. And as the court hearing day drew near, the Scofield family braced themselves for the fight ahead. They knew that the path to justice would be difficult and lengthy, but they remained steadfast in their resolve. The day had finally come to present the case in court, and the air was heavy with tension and expectation. A throng of media and fans bearing signs of encouragement greeted Micheal Scofield and his children as they arrived at the courthouse. Both of them felt the weight of what lay ahead, and woke up early to dress in their best clothing in an effort to show a united and dignified front. Micheal firmly gripped Sophia's hand, feeling a mix of trepidation and resolve. Parker, Peter, their attorney, greeted them at the door, his expression solemn but comforting. "Today is the day," Peter said, looking at each of us in the eye. "Let's stay focused and strong." They entered the courtroom and took their seats at the front, across the aisle, where Mr. Clark, the restaurant manager, sat with his attorney. He looked tense, nervously searching around as the room filled with spectators and media representatives. The judge then entered, and the courtroom fell silent. All rise. Court has commenced. According to the BFF, the case of Micheal and Sophia Scofield versus Makon is being heard today. The judge, a severe-looking lady in her 50s, took her seat and brought the court to order. Parker, Mr. Peter stepped up, his manner composed and assured. Thank you for your honor. Today, we present a case of racial discrimination and harassment that occurred at La Petite Mion. My clients, the Scofield family, were subjected to egregious treatment based solely on the color of their skin. We intend to prove that the restaurant manager, Mr. Clark, not only failed to prevent this behavior, but also colluded with the offending customers. He proceeded to present the case. Supported by witness statements and evidence, several witnesses took the stand, recounting the events of that night. Their testimonies painted a clear picture of the discrimination and humiliation the Scofield family had endured. One witness, a woman named Angela, spoke passionately. I saw it all. The Scofields were treated horribly, and when they tried to stand up for themselves, the manager did nothing. It was heartbreaking to watch. As Peter presented his case, the defense lawyer tried to minimize the incident. Your Honor, while we acknowledge that an unfortunate incident occurred, it was not as severe as the plaintiffs claim. My client did what he could under the circumstances, but the evidence was overwhelming. Photos, video recordings, and multiple witness testimonies all pointed to the blatant racism and the manager's failure to act. The public support for the Scofields was evident, with people in the courtroom murmuring in agreement as the evidence was presented. The judge listened intently, her expression growing more serious as the session progressed. Finally, after hearing all the arguments, she addressed the courtroom. Having reviewed the evidence and heard the testimonies, it is clear that the Scofield family was subjected to racial discrimination and harassment. Mr. Clark's failure to address the situation appropriately and his collusion with the offending customers are unacceptable. The courtroom was silent as the judge continued. I hereby condemn Mr. Clark for his actions and order La Petite Maison to reveal the identities of the customers involved in this incident. Furthermore, the restaurant is to issue a public apology to the Scofield family and implement training programs to prevent such occurrences in the future. Just as the session was about to conclude, there was a commotion at the back of the courtroom. An elderly man with a humble appearance pushed his way through the crowd and approached the front. Excuse me, Your Honor, he said, his voice shaking, but determined. I need to speak. The judge looked surprised, but allowed him to proceed. Please identify yourself, sir. Hello, I'm Samuel Williams, the owner of La Petite Maison. A lot of people in the town had assumed that Samuel Williams had passed away because he had been away from the town receiving cancer treatment for a long time and had given Mr. Clark management of his cherished restaurant. I've been absent due to health concerns. Samuel continued in a sorrowful tone, saying, I am deeply ashamed and horrified to learn what has happened in my absence. I trusted Mr. Clark to run my restaurant with the same values. He turned to face the Scofield family, tears in his eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Scofield, I really apologize for what you have gone through. This is not what my business stands for, and I promise that individuals who engage in such reprehensible behavior will face consequences. The room buzzed with the impact of Samuel Williams's heartfelt plea, and the judge nodded in approval. Thank you, Mr. Williams, she said. Your actions are commendable, and I hope they will help begin the healing process for the Scofield family and restore the values of your establishment. Samuel turned back to the judge. Effective immediately, am dismissing Mr. Clark from his position. Additionally, I will fully cooperate in identifying the customers who acted with such vile racism against the Scofield family. My sincere apology to everyone affected by this. Micheal and Sophia's feelings manifestly and visibly rose up to greet Samuel. "Many thanks, Mr. Williams," Micheal spoke in a calm yet emotive voice. "We really appreciate your apology and hope that it will result in genuine justice and change for our family and others." After the hearing, the Scofield family left the courtroom with a mixture of relief and tiredness. Their fight had been protracted and difficult, but they had made progress toward justice. Outside the courtroom, fans and the media swarmed them. As they drove home, Peter Parker told the crowd that today is a win for justice and equality, and that the Scofield family's bravery and tenacity have brought about genuine change. However, this is only the beginning, and we will keep fighting against racism and prejudice. Sophia and Micheal firmly gripped hands as they completed the task. With a mixture of triumph and tiredness in his voice, Micheal remarked, "We really did it." Sophia nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "Yes, we did, and we will continue to stand up for what's right." That evening, as they gathered for dinner, there was a cautious optimism among them that we've made great progress. The Scofield family, united in love and resilience, knew that their journey was far from over. But with the help of their community and the courage they had found within themselves, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Micheal stated, "We have to remain strong and keep fighting." As he glanced around the table at his family, the phone rang again as they were finishing their lunch. And Sophia nodded, her eyes full with resolve. We're in this together, and we won't back down." This time, it was a reporter who wanted to speak with the Scofield family to follow up on their court victory. The Scofield family agreed, realizing the value of keeping their story in the public eye. The following morning, the interview aired, gaining even more support from the community, as messages of support and encouragement poured in, strengthening the Scofield family's resolve. Just as the Scofield family was starting to recover from the courtroom triumph, it was evident that the fight against racism was far from over, especially for their children. When a new challenge threatened to topple their tenuous sense of peace, Jefferson, their eldest son, had been dealing with his own feelings of anger and frustration, as well as lingering scars from the traumatic events they had endured. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Sophia received a call from Jefferson's school. She listened in shock as the principal explained that Jefferson had been involved in a physical altercation. He had reacted violently to a racial slur directed at him by another student. With the words, "Black skin Micheal," she added, her voice cracking, "We need to go to the school where Jefferson got into a fight." At work, Micheal felt a wave of dread wash over him. "I'm on my way," he replied, grabbing his coat and racing out the door at the school, where they met the principal, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson was a tall man, with a stern expression, but kind eyes. "We need to discuss what happened today, Mr. Thompson said, as Micheal and Sophia entered the room. Micheal took a deep breath and asked to tell us everything. Mr. Thompson gave a nod. When Tyler, another student, called Jefferson a racist slur in the cafeteria, Jefferson retaliated by pushing Tyler, and a fight broke out that required our intervention to break up. Sophia's eyes began to flood up with tears as she heard Tyler use the term black skin in an offensive way. Mr. Thompson responded, regretting deeply that it was very inappropriate. With hurt and defiance in his eyes, Jefferson glanced up and stated, "I feel like I don't belong here." Micheal touched Jefferson's shoulder and said, "You belong here. Son, never question that, Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. In light of the situation, we must take this occurrence seriously, and both kids will face sanctions. Although Jefferson will be disciplined, the root cause of racism in our school community will also be addressed." Sophia nodded, trying to analyze her voice. "We understand, but please keep in mind that Jefferson has had a lot going on lately. And this fight is about more than just Todai. No, he's been standing up for Mr. Thompson, so we must support him. We will offer counseling and endeavor to establish a more welcoming atmosphere. But we also have to make sure that resorting to violence is not the solution. Micheal asserted firmly that while we will support any necessary disciplinary action, we also expect the school to take decisive action. We cannot allow this to continue in the fight against racism. Mr. Thompson concurred that we're determined to implement reforms. We want to establish a safe atmosphere for all of our children when they leave the principal's office. So we will host assemblies, seminars, and invite speakers to teach our students about racism and its effects. Jefferson was experiencing mixed emotions as he stepped between his parents. "I apologize," he muttered, tears welling up in his eyes. "I didn't mean to cause more trouble." Sophia gave him a strong hug, saying, "You didn't cause this, Jefferson. Racism. We need to find better ways to handle our anger. Together, we can overcome this. You're strong, Jefferson, and we'll make sure you get the support you need." Micheal nodded in agreement, and the ride home was peaceful. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, immersed in thought, the family members attempted to digest what had happened to Jefferson. Micheal started, "We understand why you reacted the way you did. But using violence as a solution will not bring about change. Instead, we must use our voices and our actions." Jefferson nodded, his face serious. "I am aware, Dad. I just couldn't tolerate it any longer," Sophia said, putting her hand on his knee. "We're proud of you for standing up for yourself. But we need to use that rage to motivate us to keep working for meaningful change." The Scofield family made the decision to seek support from their community. They made contact with local civil rights organizations, set up counseling sessions for Jefferson, and started attending community meetings to discuss the larger problem of racism in schools. Days turned into weeks as the Scofield family labored diligently to navigate Jefferson School's disciplinary process. They spoke at assemblies, attended meetings, and shared their story in the hopes of educating others and fostering a more inclusive environment. One evening, after a particularly trying day, Jefferson sat with his parents at the kitchen table. "I didn't realize how hard it would be," he admitted. But Micheal grinned. "You are making a difference, son, and with each step we take, we get closer to a better future." His pride is clear in his eyes. The Scofield family, united in love and resilience, knew that their journey was far from over. But with each challenge they faced, they grew stronger, ready to continue their fight for justice and equality. Sophia nodded, "We're in this together, and we'll keep fighting no matter what." As they got ready for bed that night, the weight of the day's events hung heavy in the air, but so did a sense of resolve and hope. A few days following the school incident, the Scofield family's lives started to find their new rhythm. They were getting back on their feet, participating in community events, and speaking out against racism. One of these leisurely days was marked by Micheal receiving an unexpected call that determined the next step to take. As Michael's phone called as he was organizing tools in the garage, his curiosity was piqued. He wiped his hands on a cloth and answered, "Hello, well, Scofield." "Mr. Scofield," the reply was, "This is Samuel Williams, the owner of La Petite Mia." The voice weak but distinct. Micheal immediately stood up. "Mr. Williams, it's good to hear from you. How can I help you today?" he inquired in a polite manner. "I'm phoning to inquire about our most recent court session. I've taken some time to compile the details you asked for, and I have the names of the clients that participated in the racist behaviors at my restaurant." Samuel apologized in a regretful tone. "I want to stress once more that I will not put up with this kind of behavior." Micheal experienced a wave of resolution mixed with thankfulness. "Thank you, Mr. Williams. It means a lot to us that you are supporting us in this battle. It's only right," Samuel went on. "I'm available to assist you in any way I can to make sure justice is done, and those who are at fault are held accountable." Micheal gave him a nod, acknowledging the weight of Samuel's dedication. "Thank you. I'll let our lawyer know about this and see what happens next. Please, Mr. Scofield, and keep me updated. I want to make sure that my business is never a place where discrimination of this kind happens again." After Samuel finished, they both hung up with the updated knowledge. Micheal, anticipating the consequences but also feeling anxious, called Peter Parker, their attorney, right away. "Peter, I just got off the phone with Samuel Williams. And that's fantastic news. Gave us the identities of the people that were involved in the incident." "Micheal," Peter answered, his voice full of eagerness. "This might greatly strengthen our case against them. I'll begin the legal process right away." And within days, Peter filed requests to have the named parties appear in court. This time, the public's backing and the restaurant owner's unambiguous position helped the legal wheels turn more quickly. Opposing racism, subpoenas were issued to all parties involved shortly after the day of judgment was scheduled. As the court date drew nearer, the community came together to support the Scofield family with greater vigor than before. After sitting down with their family, Micheal and Sophia explained what was going to happen. "We want to teach you that justice can prevail, and that standing up for what's right is worthwhile." Micheal reminded his children, who listened carefully, that this is a huge step, not just for us, but for everyone who has been silently suffering from such hate. The family gathered in the living room the night before the trial, a small ritual that had become their way of coping and strengthening their bond. Sophia added, holding her children's hands, and they talked about their hopes and fears, reinforcing their commitment to see this through regardless of the outcome. "We've come this far because we've stayed united, considering each of his kids and his wife," Micheal remarked. "No matter what happens tomorrow, know that we've made a difference." Sophia grinned broadly. "Misty, this is to demonstrate that no one should ever have to go through what we went through and to ensure that decency and respect triumph out." The family went to bed, with Micheal whispering a private prayer in the hopes of strength and justice. The family faced another day in court, feeling a mixture of apprehension and resolve. This time, they were not only passive recipients of judgment, but active players in seeking accountability. Now that the day of the important court session had finally arrived, Sophia clasped his hand in agreement, both of them aware that the following day could change their lives again. The courtroom was packed with supporters of the Scofield family, filling the benches in a silent show of solidarity. The judge entered, bringing the room to a hushed silence. "Please be seated," the judge commanded, and the session began. Micheal, Sophia, their children, and their steadfast lawyer Peter Parker arrived early at the courthouse. The morning air was crisp and filled with a tense anticipation. Across from them, the defendants, a group of individuals who had displayed egregious racism at La Petite Mian. The first to speak was Peter Parker. His voice was calm but forceful, and his presence was commanding. As he outlined the case against the defendants, "Ladies and gentlemen," he started by saying, "Today, we address not just an incident of racism, but a blatant disregard for decency and respect. The defendants here did more than just speak hate speech. They also acted in a way that has no place in our society." He then went on to present compelling and irrefutable evidence, including security footage from the restaurant and eyewitness accounts. When it was the defendant's turn to speak, the defense attempted to downplay the severity of the actions, suggesting that the events were a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. "We request leniency." The defendants squirmed in their seats, their lawyer frantically scribbling notes attempting to formulate a response, but the evidence presented left little room for doubt, and their nervous glances betrayed their fading confidence. The defendants were shown to have intimidated and harassed the Scofield family in addition to using derogatory language directed towards their black skin. After a brief break, the judge returned to deliver her verdict, and the room tensed with anticipation. as the evidence presented today confirmed a willful act of racism and harassment. Their lawyer pleaded, but his voice lacked the conviction needed to sway the courtroom. The judge spoke up, saying that such behavior is illegal and would not be allowed. It is the court's duty to maintain justice and make sure that these acts have the proper repercussions. After that, she focused exclusively on the defendants, saying, "Given the seriousness of your acts and the harm you have caused to your family, I find it necessary to impose a sentence that reflects the gravity of your offenses." The judge's next words were anticipated by all in the silent courtroom. "As a result, I've sentenced each of you to 200 hours of community service, with an emphasis on racial sensitivity and anti-discrimination training. In addition, you must pay a sizable fine that will be donated to anti-racism organizations." NGOs. The Scofield family felt a great sense of relief wash over them. As the courtroom burst into subdued laughter, the defendants' faces fell as the reality of the sentence set in. Harsher and more impactful than what had been applied to the restaurant manager, ensuring a clear message was sent. Micheal and Sophia were met with cheers from their supporters as they left the courthouse, demonstrating the strong support of the community. Bob Parker was standing next to them, a content smile on his face. "Today was a triumph for the entire anti-racism movement, not just your family." He shook Michael's hand and said, "This journey has been long and hard, but today we made a difference." Micheal glanced at his family, and his heart was full. "We spoke up for what is right," and Sophia nodded, her eyes wet with emotion. "Yes, we did, and we will keep speaking up for those who might not have a voice." The family gathered around the dinner table and discussed the day's events and the journey they had been on. "They showed that change is possible with courage and unity," Micheal said, looking at each of his children. The family embraced their bond, strengthened by the trials they had endured and overcome together as they walked away from the courthouse. Their steps were lightened by the justice that had been served that evening. When Micheal and Sophia went to bed that night, they knew that even though this chapter of their struggle had ended, their journey would continue because they had faced hatred head on and come out stronger, their resolve unwavering. Sophia continued, saying, "We must keep advocating, keep educating, and keep supporting each other. The fight against racism doesn't end here, it evolves." The Scofield family's house was bathed in the soft light of the early sun, the morning, following the court decision that held the bigots accountable, signifying a symbolic new beginning. "Good morning, Micheal." It was on this serene morning that he received a call from Samuel Williams, the elderly proprietor of La Petite Maison. Samuel's voice was kind, but sorrowful. Samuel cleared his throat a little. "I wanted to personally apologize again for the terrible experience your family had at my restaurant. It's unacceptable, and I'm committed to making things right," he said. Samuel continued, with a hint of hesitation in his voice. "I learned from the maitre d' about the special occasion you were celebrating that 9th birthday of your youngest son. It was meant to be a joyful celebration, and I'm heartbroken it turned out the way it did." Micheal responded, feeling the sincerity in Samuel's voice. "Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate your efforts to set things right. There's something else I wanted to discuss." Micheal listened, moved by the proprietor's obvious regret and attention to detail. "Samuel sincerely proposed that I ask your family to return to La Petite Maison for a special supper. It would be my pleasure to host you and make sure it's a night to remember, for all the right reasons." Moved by the gesture, this time that evening, the Scofield family dressed up and drove to the restaurant with a mixture of trepidation and hope. Because the last time they had made this trip, it had ended in humiliation and heartache. Micheal talked about it with Sophia and the kids, and they decided to accept the invitation, seeing it as an opportunity to replace a painful memory with a better one. As they reached the entry, they could sense a difference in the atmosphere. The doors opened to a cozy and inviting space, and they prayed for healing tonight. Shouts of compassion and applause from the staff and other customers filled the air. Eliminating, Samuel met them at the door with echoes of that tragic night. His smile conveys a sincere greeting to the Scofield family, emphasizing the excitement and celebration of tonight. The children laughed as their earlier worries vanished. With each course, as the dessert plates were cleared, he announced, leading them to a beautifully decorated table at the center of the restaurant. The dinner was nothing short of spectacular. Each course was painstakingly prepared, the flavors bursting with the promise of redemption. Samuel sat with them, sharing stories and making sure that every detail was perfect. Samuel got up to speak to the family. Micheal, this evening, Sophia, was not only about righting a mistake, but also about hope and the future. He started off with a calm, serious voice, saying, "There's something I'd like to propose." He paused and looked. "Micheal, you have an opportunity to take on a crucial role, following the resignation of the manager. Given your demonstrated integrity and ability to overcome hardship, I believe you would be the most suitable candidate to take over as manager of La Petite Monde. Would you be open to the idea?" Micheal was caught off guard by the offer and felt conflicted. Micheal said, with a voice full with passion, crossing his face as he looked at Sophia, whose reassuring smile told him everything he needed to know. "Mr. Williams, it would be a pleasure. I commit to upholding the respect and inclusivity you hold dear, making sure that no one else experiences what occurred to us." With obvious relief, Samuel held Michael's hand and said, "Thank you, Micheal. I put my trust in you to handle La Petite Monde's future." The entire restaurant erupted in cheers and well wishes as the evening came to a close. The Scofield family felt like they had a fresh start and closure after they departed La Petite Monde. As they made their way home, they talked about the future and what Michael's new role might involve. That night, as the family gathered for a quiet moment before bed, Micheal took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. He thought aloud that tonight was about more than just dinner. It was about charting a new course for everyone who walks into La Petite Monde going forward. Sophia nodded, squeezing his hand and agreeing to a new chapter full of hope and new responsibilities. With Micheal leading La Train Bleue, they looked forward to a future where compassion and respect prevailed, guaranteeing a welcoming environment for everyone. "We've turned a page on." They felt a feeling of pride and unanimity and excitement for this new chapter. With those encouraging words, Sophia answered, in a voice full of determination, "Yes, we are. I'm ready to lead by example. We'll continue to make a difference together." The Scofield family was ready to face the new opportunities and challenges that lay ahead, with courage and hope, because the future was bright and they were prepared to meet it head-on. Bolstered by their love and unwavering commitment to justice and inclusivity. Years had gone by since the Scofield family confronted and conquered their historic obstacles. As the years and seasons passed, once raw scars of injustice gradually healed to become strong scars of advocacy and resilience. Sophia and Micheal saw their relatives. The restaurant had flourished under Michael's management, driven by their newfound purpose and the stability brought by his role at La Train Bleue. His commitment to fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment resonated with the community, transforming the establishment into a symbol of change and a beacon of hope. Profits soared, but more importantly, Micheal used the platform to host events that promoted social justice and educated people, tying his work with his mission. Together with her kids, Sophia had gotten very involved in community centers that focused on educating youth about the value of diversity and the negative effects of racism. Her own family's experiences had fueled her love for the cause. Inspired by their parents, each of her children followed different paths that reflected the same theme: fighting for justice. Now, a political science major at college, Jefferson was driven to alter minds and policies. The younger Makon frequently went to workshops and seminars with his mother, where he learned about equality and the value of speaking out against prejudice. When Micheal's phone rang one peaceful evening, as the family gathered in their cozy living room to reflect on the years past, it was their lawyer, Peter Parker, whose voice still had the same lively vitality. "Micheal, let me share some updates." Peter declared that after a thorough investigation exposed their prejudices, the authorities in charge of the years-long delay in your court case have now been held accountable, removed from their posts, and subject to harsh punishments. When Micheal told the family the news, a deep sense of relief enveloped them. It serves as a prompt, as they talked about this last leg of their arduous journey. Micheal stated that justice, albeit occasionally slow, may prevail, and our effort wasn't in vain. Sophia grinned at her relatives. She pondered that confronting injustice, however how difficult it may seem, is worth it in the long run, not just for ourselves, but also for those who will follow us. As the evening wore on, the conversation sparked a new energy in them. The children spoke excitedly about their plans and dreams, each infused with the desire to contribute to a more just and fair world. The following morning, the family visited La Train Bleu, which served as a community hub where discussions of racial equality and justice were encouraged. Micheal nodded, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding, born from years of struggle and triumph. "Perhaps we've planted quite a few." As the day went on, the Scofields continued their work, their lives interwoven with their community, each action and decision driven by the belief in change and the necessity of facing injustice head-on. They had learned that the path to change was a mosaic of many small acts, each as crucial as the next. That evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows and bathing their home in a gold glow, Micheal's presence was a testament to the transformative power of leadership and vision. The restaurant walls were adorned with artwork by local Black artists, quotes from civil rights leaders, and photos of community events. Micheal and Sophia paused to consider their progress. "Yes, we have," Sophia said, taking in a little portion of their house. "There's still so much to do, but we do it together. And we do it fueled by love and justice," Micheal concurred. The Scofield family looked forward, ready to face whatever challenges might come, knowing they had the strength, the community, and the resolve to meet them head-on. With their legacy of activism, education, and advocacy, their lives continued to inspire and be inspired. If you liked this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. This video that is suggested below will definitely inspire others. Their story, marked by trials and triumphs, was a beacon for others and a narrative of hope. I hope your session goes well, and I'll see you in the next story.